Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Lieutenant Colonel Brett Grant. We warmly welcome Air Commodore Retired Peter McDermott, National Vice President, Air Force Association. Wing Commander Michael Garside, Australian War Memorial Air Force Fellow. Flight Lieutenant Mark Merrill, Commanding Officer, 226 Squadron, Australian Air Force Cadets. And Mr. David Wood, representing the Loxton, South Australia RSL sub-branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching this ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Keith Jacob Schott. Keith Schott was born to Charles and Bertha Schott on the 18th of January 1924 in the Melbourne suburb of Elwood. When Keith was 5 years old, his father died, leaving his mother to bring up Keith and his brother Frank. Keith was fond of tennis and swimming and played football and cricket while at Elwood Central School and Wesley College. He was a bright student, achieving a first-class pass in all subjects in his intermediate certificate. He took an intermediate accountancy exam and after leaving school found work as a junior audit clerk with Edwin V. Nixon and Partners, Chartered Accountants. Schott spent a year with the Wesley College Cadets in 1940 and served for 6 months in 1942 as a gunner with the 22nd Anti-Tank Battalion. He enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on the 8th of September 1942 at the age of 18 and going on to train as a wireless operator and air gunner. On the 3rd of July 1943, Schott embarked from Sydney for overseas service, arriving in the United Kingdom in August. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,000 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, gunners and engineers who joined Australian and British squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. In England, Schott underwent further specialist training. On the 3rd of July 1944, he was posted to number 467 Squadron, RAAF. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the four-winged Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. Just after 11 p.m. on the night of the 18th of July, number 467 Squadron, as part of a major raid on the railway junction at Ravigny, France, Schott was the wireless operator and air gunner of Lancaster P0C. While the target was all but destroyed, the Luftwaffe's defences were strong, and 24 of the 110 bombers failed to return to base. Number 467 Squadron had committed 8 aircraft to the attack and lost 2, one of which was Schott's Lancaster. At around 2:50 a.m, the starboard engine of Lancaster P0C was hit by a night fighter near Brabant-le-Roi, 2 kilometres north of the target. The pilot ordered all to evacuate, but only 3 escaped before an explosion sent the aircraft plunging into a field near Bellefontaine Farm. Flight Sergeant Schott, Flying Officer David Bahari and Flight Sergeant Frank Rogers were killed immediately. British Sergeant Eric Brownhall lived for 2 days in a German hospital before succumbing to his injuries. British Sergeants John Brown and William Johnson had managed to parachute out before the explosion, and Australian Flight Sergeant Frederick White was thrown clear and landed safely. With the help of the French people, all 3 evaded capture and made it safely back to the United Kingdom. After the war, the remains of Commonwealth servicemen buried in Europe were examined and identified where possible. Schott's remains were identified and he was reinterred at Brabant-le-Roi Cemetery under the inscription, "His duty nobly done, one of the best." Schott was dearly missed by his family and friends back in Australia, who placed in memoriam notices in the newspaper after he died. He was 20 years old. Flight Sergeant Keith Schott's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. Now we remember Flight Sergeant Keith Jacob Schott, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we who are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrubber Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.